Namaskar, hello and a very warm welcome viewers. You're watching Committee Report with your host Kriti Mishra. Today we'll take a closer look at the report of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture on Safety and Security in Civil Aviation. The Indian civil aviation industry has seen an exponential growth in passenger traffic over the past few years and a corresponding increase in the numbers of airports, aircraft and flight routes. Niti Aayog has envisaged expanding airport capacity by more than 5 times to handle 1 billion trips a year. This unprecedented growth has increased the security needs of the civil aviation sector. Airport security is also a great concern for domestic and international travellers in the wake of threats of terrorism. It is therefore imperative for the government to ensure the security of airport as per international standards with zero tolerance against any loopholes. So before we commence our discussion, here's a detailed report for our viewers on key observations and recommendations of the committee. Take a look. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture recommended that periodic surveys should be carried out to assess the changing threat perception at all airports in the country. The panel also said that Ministry of Civil Aviation must request the Ministry of Finance for higher allocation at the revised estimate stage.
Landing, instrumentation, zero vision, wherever it is there, they have to have a separate special instruments are available. They have to concentrate. And some of the defense airports are still under civilian, what they are using the airports, it is still under the defense control. Those should be segregated.
The committee observed that compliance with all safety and maintenance regulations for aircraft engines was critical from a safety point of view. To ensure airworthiness of aircraft engines, the committee recommended making provisions to impose heavy penalty on airline operators which are found to be violating rules. The panel also said that ILS or instrument landing system must be installed at all airports at the earliest. And for deeper insights, I'm joined by an illustrious panel joining us through virtual platform. Mr. Bharat Margani, MP Lok Sabha. He represents the YSRCP. And joining us, Dr. Sanat Kaul, Chairman of International Foundation for Aviation and Drones. I welcome you all on Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us. And Mr. Margani, let me begin the program with you. The committee noted that out of 118 operational airports, only 64 airports are under Central Industrial Security Force cover, while 54 airports have no such cover. That comes across as the biggest concern. Your opening thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Kriti. The Standing Committee under the leadership of PG Venkatesh, we happened to discuss on this the report. So perhaps you might be knowing because of this COVID, the Central Industrial Security Force has to be recruited. So since 2020, it has been stopped. So this is the high time, and we need the Ministry of the Home has to take the control of it, and whatever the shortage there from for all these airports. And in fact, when you see, there are about 28 ultra-sensitive airports is also there. And in fact, in that 24, I guess, if I'm not wrong, there are about 24 airports are there with the CISF, and the rest of the airports, ultra-sensitive airports, has to be taken the utmost care on that. So immediately, the Home Ministry has to deploy all the CISF employees. And as far as my knowledge is concerned, there are still the CISF, the professionals are still there with the COVID in the last report as we see. And more to that, the rest of the airports has to be taken control for all these CISF people has to be deployed at the war footing basis. It is immediate and it is required and very essential. Because as far as when you see about the international standards are concerned, so when these CISF professionals are having to detect all the passengers, they are taking in a door-based metal thing.
Yes.
So where is the international standards? The international standards have to be come up with biometric and even with the retina And as far as the Bangalore Kempagoda Airport is concerned, they are coming up with the international standards with the biometric, and it has to be linked with the Aadhaar card.
Yes.
So that the hassle-free movement of the passengers will also take in place. And these all the observations, the government of India has to immediately start up in a war footing.
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid concern that you're raising. Let me take that to Dr. Kaul. Dr. Kaul, the committee observed that most of the airports in the country use door-frame metal detectors and hand-held metal detectors for security checks. This is an absolutely obsolete system. How do we upgrade it without infringing upon the privacy of travelers, A, while also upholding the security measures, B?
Well, I think the basic issue is that the who is paying for the security. Everybody would like to have not the metal detector, but the full-scale operation of screening. But this report does not come out with that, and therefore that is, I think, a lacuna in it, but because it costs money. The second thing, as earlier pointed out, was that CISF was introduced as airport police, airport security police in 2000. And now we are 22 years after that, and we only find that only a few airports they've taken over, not all. So that is going slow, very, very slow in covering the entire thing. Earlier, it used to be state police. And after that, it's realized that the state police does not have that kind of dedication for the airport security, because the commissioner of police of that town has to decide how many constables he has to keep at the airport and how many he can take out at any particular time when there's some problem in the city. So this was becoming a problem, and therefore CISF was brought in. But CISF has not been able to cover the entire country. Second thing is that the International Civil Aviation Organization also conducts audits on security. From that angle, I think we are okay. The introduction of new machines, of new technology, is an issue which is very much required. And I think somewhere or the other, the issue of costing, who is going to pay for it, needs to be decided. And that is where I think something gets stuck at time. And that is what, unfortunately, the committee has not touched upon. I think it should have been touched upon.
All right, let's talk about another important aspect, Mr. Margani. The committee has noted that security staff is often the first point of interaction between foreign passengers and country's citizens. So how do we sensitize them in soft skills?
Yeah, and let me add on to the previous question. So where you have raised about the metal detectors. So is there any other holistic approach for this security personnel to detect that and to check all the passengers? In fact, when I'm a frequent traveler in the domestic way, so generally the CISF personnel happen to they lead the checking the queues part. So as you earlier mentioned about the threats with the terrorists and all, so this has to be kept a very higher priority. And my perception, there should be the fund has to be infused. So the biometric has to come. The international standards has to be implemented in all the airports, because one single incident happened, it is really shame for the country. So in this particular regard, so the country has to come forward, and the Home Ministry and the Civil Aviation Ministry jointly has to come forward in terms of the security and to ensure the passengers, to ensure the country that the Indian airports are the safest airports in the world, because our country is being the biggest democratic country in the world, perhaps. And as we know, we are having the neighbors on the northeast and the northwest, and a lot of the fringe elements also involved in different kinds of activities. So India should be more in the holistic approach in terms of the security.
All right, Mr. Margani, we were talking about sensitizing them in soft skills.
Yes, as far as the international, so that is what I've been telling previously also. So the international standards of technology has to be implemented in terms of the security check, the biometric and retina, and also the Aadhaar link has to be there. So in a way, the privacy is utmost important in terms of the security when they are checking up with this metal detectors. And these kind of outdated and old age things has to be replaced with the latest technology. So in fact, when I have to travel to United States of America, there is completely in a closed detector. Once the passenger comes inside, and that will be scanned from the top to the bottom. So that kind of standards has to be implemented across the country. So the security of the passengers and the security of the country is the highest priority. Whatever the money matters, even the country has to invest on the civil aviation department. After all, it is a pride for the country. So these kind of soft skills, the terms has to be maintained by the CISF people. And in fact, earlier, Sanat sir has also mentioned regarding the commissionerate has to decide how many employees, how many security personnel has to be deployed there at the particular airports. But in fact, there has to be, it's a collective responsibility of the Home Ministry, Civil Aviation, and as well as the Police Department of the state.
All right, Mr. Margani, you were talking about your experiences abroad. What are the other best practices from across the globe that we can incorporate in our country?
Yeah, that is what I've been telling you. Once the passenger, if he happens to enter the security area, he'll go to the closed cabin to where from the top, from the head to the toe, he'll be scanned completely, whether any kind of the items are there. So what kind of things he's been carrying, and everything is completely scanned. And is ultra minute way, the security is being considered across the developed countries in America and such places. So that kind of sensitive, first government has to target considering the sensitive airports, where the ultra sensitive airports, when you happen to see, is around 28 airports in the country. So firstly, the government has to initially implement these kind of biometric and other linked has to be taken place. So once there is any remark on the particular passenger, when he'll be traced in the Aadhaar link itself. So when the passenger has having no good contact, and he has to be expelled in air traveling. So these kind of practices has to be implemented across the country.
Absolutely, that's a very valid suggestion that you're giving. But talking about helicopters now, Dr. Kaul, there have been many fatalities due to the helicopter accidents in the country. To ensure safe helicopter operations, the committee recommended the Ministry of Civil Aviation to formulate guidelines on safe helicopter operations in unfavorable weather. What are your key suggestions, sir?
Well, helicopters are more sensitive to climate, and therefore they require a much greater level of safety concerns. And we've just had a very unfortunate accident of the military helicopter in which the chief was there. So these are concerns where the reasons why helicopter accidents take place is something which can be only decided by an inquiry, and they take place all over the world. So it is not an issue that we are having a much higher rate of helicopter accidents, but helicopter is a more sensitive flying instrument, and therefore more precautions have to be taken. And that's all I can say. I mean, otherwise, to say that the helicopters are not good enough or that the pilots are not good enough, I don't think that can be considered correct. But may I go back to the report and make some one observation? This report has not dealt with a very major threat which is coming, and that is the potential of drone attack on an airport. They have mentioned it in cursory in the passing, but drone attacks to an airport need anti-drone infrastructure, which has hardly come up in this country. And major airports are always under threat of a rogue drone which somebody might send. So it has nothing to do with the Civil Aviation Authority. Some rogue drones are available quite freely, and all you have to do is to arm a drone and send it across. So you have to have an anti-drone policy for the airports, which is very necessary for the civil aviation sector.
All
And
right,
that's where I think
yes, sir.
this
You're
report
making
is
a
not
very
really
important
going.
point there. Let me take that to Mr. Margani, who is also part of this parliamentary committee. Mr. Margani, we know that drones pose a safety risk to people in drones' area of operation, especially if they are operated with malified intentions. How serious do you think this threat is, and what could be the solution?
Okay, so let me add to the chopper crashes earlier also. And we all know that in the standing committee and also inside the parliament and outside the parliament, we've been discussing about the helicopter crashes. So in fact, I tell you, in the inclement weather conditions, our helicopters and choppers has to be and regularly has to be monitored in terms of repairs, and the outdated helicopter has to be taken out and has to be replaced with the new choppers of the latest technology. In fact, many of the VIPs, especially in my state of Andhra Pradesh, our late Chief Minister, former Chief Minister Dr. YS Rajashekar Reddy ji was died in the helicopter crash. And in fact, we have seen in the former Prime Minister of Marathi Desai also, he is involved in the crash of the helicopter, where luckily he found to be alive. So the helicopter crashes has to be taken in an ultra serious way, and wherever the outdated helicopters has to be replaced with the latest ones and the new technology, the helicopters has to be replaced there. So when it comes to the safety is the utmost priority of the government, and as we all know, our road structure is the biggest road structure across the globe. After United States of America, India has happened to have the biggest road structure. But we have seen the young India, is lot many vehicles are coming across, and also when it comes when it matches with the roads, the vehicles, the number of vehicles have increased beyond the limit. And whereas the road safety measures, when you take at the city areas where the national highway passes on the city area, but there are in every city area, we required an bypass road, so that when the national highway covers in the city limits, and at the staggered junctions, we required the flyovers on every accident-prone junctions, and even the high-mast lights and the junction improvements has to be taken place. And when you see abroad in all the Western countries, the safety is the utmost priority of the country. But here, how much education is being happening across the road safety is very minimum. So, in fact, we need to involve the college students and the school students in propaganda of the road safety. And it has to be, and I also raised in the demand for grants in the parliament. So, it has to be included with the insurance policy. So wherever the people are breaching the laws and rules, the highest the breaching of the rules, the insurance premium will go more higher. And when the people are following the insurance, the rules and the policy, the insurance premium shall be incentivized. And these kind of measures has to be taken place, and the government has to promote more in terms of road safety. And especially when you see about the road safety, about the stray cattle. In our country, major country, we see the greenfield roads, and the government right now, Government of India and the Road Transport Ministry is planning more greenfield roads. There will be a lot of crisscross of the stray cattle, and who is responsible for it? And there shall be underpasses in every city area when the greenfield roads have been laying. So at every village area, there shall be an underpass, so that the free movement of the cattle can be taken place very easily. And these kind of measures, the government should have to take an endeavor in implementing all these new roads with an holistic approach and with a broad view. And in fact, there shall be, for instance, I tell you, I'm there in the subcommittee of the road safety also. And there shall be a bypass road for every city when the national highway passes by in the city limits, where the city has crossed beyond the national highway for about 4-5 kilometers. So there will be a lot of crisscross from the junctions, from the city, traffic will be more. So there shall be every bypass for every 500,000 and above population, we require bypass roads, and as well as there shall be a high mast light on every junction, and the service roads has to be placed in the city limit area, and these kind of measures has to be taken place. And more to that, there shall be the toilets is the great battle for the government, because the toilets has to be placed at every the city or village corner by the National Highway people. National Highway Department has to implement the toilets and construct the new toilets everywhere wherever it is required, because there is lot of revolutionary changes is being taken place in the road transport ministry, especially in the growth trajectory of the country. The ministry is connecting all the north, east, south, west, and even all the corridors in terms of Bharatmala, in terms of Sagarmala. The connectivity of the roads is going splendidly good. So the road safety measures has to be implemented. A lot of NGOs has to be involved in the propagation of the road safety, so that our young India should have the concern about the road safety, to follow the strict traffic rules. And as I said before regarding the insurance premium, and this kind of policy has to be implemented across the country.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Kaul, lastly, to ensure that previous accidents like the ones in Mangalore and Calicut do not recur, the committee recommended that the latest tech instruments should be installed at all airports at the earliest. The instrument landing system offers significant safety in landing aircraft nighttime or in bad weather conditions. How soon do you think the government can install ILS at all the airports?
Yeah, well, I think the government is moving towards instrument landing system in all airports, but I presume that the delays is because of the costing and the budgeting of the whole thing. But at the same time, let me say that there are some airports which are not so safe. They are not safe because they are kind of, say, a tabletop airport. The Mangalore airport has had 2 accidents. These are difficult airports. They do not conform to the ICAO standards, but at the same time, they're required. So India notifies that the length of the airport is deficient and it's a tabletop airport. So there are certain issues, but ILS is being put, and well, I don't know the schedule, but they should be putting it on all airports. In fact, what they have not done over the years, which I must bring out, is the use of Gagan for navigation. Once we have a satellite called Gagan, which is a navigation satellite, and that does a lot of precise landing. Without use of ILS and all will become in a way redundant, but we have not been able to utilize it because there are some instruments which aircraft require at the cockpit, which have not been put in most of the aircraft. So we have actually not, we have underutilized Gagan, highly underutilized Gagan, and which has, I don't know, it's been in the air as a satellite for about 10 years or so.
So that's another valid suggestion being given by our guests on the panel. But the committee gave these important observations after meetings with several stakeholders. Take a look at this report.
In the view of the significance of the subject, the department-related Parliamentary Standing Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture decided to take up the subject, issues related to safety and security in civil aviation, for examination and report. The report was presented on March 31st. The committee heard the views of Secretary, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Directorate General of Civil Aviation and Central Industrial Security Force, among others.
On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Margani and Dr. Kaul. Next week, we'll return with highlights of another important committee report. Till then, take care and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Namaskar.